But it was, and then of course there's the one lady. It's like, you remind me of my grandson, and you're just like, okay, well, why? I said he must have been a handsome, funny devil,
He was a moron.
he was a moron. He tried to be a
Kidding.
musician for his whole life. But it did. It just really, I don't know, man. It really puts you in a frame of mind.
Sure.
That what they're right, and that's when I hear people that are just they're upset about things and they're arguing about certain things. I'm just like, you don't get it. This is not a dress rehearsal. I spent so many years treating it like one, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to practice all this and get it right, so then I can start living life. Well, it's past now. Your life has passed.
Not all of it, but
no, people are like, well, you're
portion.
only 46. I'm like, I get that, but I mean, 26 does not seem that long ago.
Right. It flies, man.
That 20 years, I'm like, and you know why? Because I basically was doing the same shit I'm doing now,
right?
Except around different people.
Exactly.
There's a couple of small people I helped create, and then there's a new female person, and some friends. But other than that, a lot of my other closest friends I knew in 2001.
Sure.
So it's like, not a whole lot has changed. I still haven't figured it out financially, and I'm still, but and so so it's just a lot of reflection of past relationships and things that choices like and people are like, well, you can't live in if only. I'm like, I get that. Like, trust me, dude. I've been in therapy for years. There's nothing you're gonna say to me I haven't heard a million times and paid for. Or heard or read in a book, or I said, there's not going to be anything like that. I said, but the fact is that you know what? Sometimes I have to reflect on that in the sense of, I can share now. I have to reflect on it to make sure that I stay in that frame of mind of whenever I second, well, maybe I shouldn't try that or shouldn't do that. And I'm like, well, why? What the hell difference does it make?
Right.
Which is why, and I've had a lot of people say, was you just going to keep throwing everything at the wall until something sticks? I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Like Carlin says, take an effing chance.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, well, yeah, that's not a cut down to entrepreneurs, because that's what we do.
Right.
And it's the same thing with, with music, where I think a lot of people that are not in the industry don't understand that most musicians get to a point in their 40s or 50s because they didn't stop. Period.
Right.
It's not like, okay, it's not like sports. If I don't make it by 22, then I don't have a chance. Right. You age out of that professionally.
Right. Yeah.
You can coach and blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, I know a lot of guys in their 50s who got their first big gig and are doing well now because they just never stopped.
Yeah.
And I honestly believe it took me a long time. It's like, and I know I'm at that skill set.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's not a skill set problem. I said, it's not a talent problem. That's the price of admission. That's to get into the park.
Right.
If you want to ride the Texas Giant, you got to stand in line and wait and keep pushing to ride the Texas Giant. And I said, and I feel like that's where I'm like next to get on the Texas Giant. Why would I walk away right now?
Exactly.
And they just kind of look at me and I'm like, no, I'm not going to. They're just, I'm stubborn as hell about it.
That's all right.
But why would I have to? It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense.
But a lot of people, feel that way. I mean, my ex was, and I understand because she didn't have that background, but it was just like, get a real job, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, real job? I made $300 in 2 hours. Can you do that? No, I don't do it 40 hours yet.
Well,
or I don't
not legally.
Well, I mean, I know she could, but that's a whole nother show.
Coming next Monday.
But it's just, I don't know. I'm like, and I'm really, really kind of sick of that whole thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And we, it's kind of that industry. And I do think the whole COVID aspect of everything has changed that in a lot, where people are like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, all those people with 6-figure jobs, Carla included, that just lost it because, well, we're letting you go. I'm like, so how is that a real job? I mean,
right.
Everything is a real job, in the sense of, and so I think it's just kind of infected me more to just like, you know what, I got to get out of the shitty committee. I just got to push even harder. And people are like, how are you going to push harder? I'm like, you can always push harder. I know I'm busy right now, but that doesn't mean there's something I can do smarter. I can double up on something. Maybe there's something I can let go of so I can put more time on something else. I said, so I'm just reformatting my whole thing. But generally speaking, when I sit in the past and I'm, when I thought what my life was going to look like, there's certain aspects of that I'm like, that's gone.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
If there's a certain, you have your certain household with a certain wife and certain kids and okay, that's all in your imagination. So that truck is shipped, right?
Yeah,
It's done.
that ship's
I said, but
it's
as far
sitting
as
out in the bay somewhere.
it is,
now.
it's sitting out and people are swimming out to it for Black Friday. And so I think, but what I can do is absolutely the other aspects of career wise. And so I tell people, if there's something I've ever wanted to do, I just start doing it, whether I finish it or not. So the only exception to that we talked about last Monday is with me getting on stage and doing stand up. That's the one thing that I've got to break through.
Yep.
That cherry's got to bust. So, but everything else, like I've even, a couple of months ago, I started writing a screenplay.
Okay.
I was just like, I really want to write a screenplay or a book. And I was like, I really get a screenplay because I actually know people I can hand a screenplay to. I actually know people I can hand a book to. But I think in movies, and I think I'd rather tell the story. And it's called, but I've been working on it for a while. It's called, what is it called?
You tell me.
I just totally brain farted on the name of the screen. Working Nobody. And what it is, it's kind of, it does have some of my life in it, a lot of aspects, and then there's a lot of fiction to, make it more entertaining than my life. But it's basically, it's the working nobody. It's the guys like you and I who have made a living and played professionally in countless places, countless bands that no one's ever heard of. But we're the working nobodies. And people realize there's just thousands and thousands and thousands of those people who scrape by a living, incredibly talented, but just because they didn't have that one aspect and you didn't see them on Conan or whatever, that doesn't mean that they're not at that level of players, and I think a lot of people have to understand that. I
mean, as well as anybody, but it's right time, right place, a lot of discoveries. It's just, a record producer or talent scout happened to be, show up for his nephew's performance and see somebody that's like, oh, we gotta sign this cat.
Absolutely. And as far as players, that's why I think that the guys behind the scenes that are just full-time players, whether it's your studio guys or your live guys, or because there's usually kind of two separate worlds there.
Sure.
Sometimes you get the people who mix, but a lot of those people are in 40 plus because it was a constant, just hardworking, busting their butt, and it's funny because it's like, if you want to piss me off really, really quickly, you can always tell me that I should pay my dues. And that's why I haven't made it in the music industry, because I will punch you in the dick. It would
absolutely no. I mean,
I'm like, you have no clue.
Punch them in the throat. Absolutely.
I've totally done that.
Yeah,
I have completely paid my dues. The thing is I'm not bitter about that. One of my best friends a long time ago had always told me, I was like, the definition of luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Right.
That's the definition of luck. And I took that to heart and said, I just always has to be prepared. So if there's an opportunity that comes up, and that's why I take every opportunity if I can.
Absolutely.
People are like, well, it's just, and people are talking about, well, did you get paid for the thing Friday? I know. It's like, it's one of those opportunities that make total sense to go do.
Sure.
It's just an hour. It's with a really cool trio that I think we're sounding pretty dang good. It's different. Not to mention we can knock the dust off for Vegas and blah, blah, blah. Well, they ended up paying us some anyway, just because they were floored, and we're like, okay, cool. So, but it was like, we took that opportunity because Jimmy Barkus, the front man, the guitar player and singer for this, he's a full-time working acoustic solo guy. He makes really, does pretty well, whatever.
Sure.
His Friday nights are usually a $400 to $600 night for him. So for him to say, hey, we need to do this.
Yeah. That tells you something.
Yeah. You can take that to the bank. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
So we did.
Sure.
And so I was like, absolutely. If you're in, Jimmy, because I know you're the one that's turning down your normal, because he does, he's got a lot of rotations that he does. And so you take every opportunity. How small it is, it doesn't matter. I mean, I did that independent film thing because it's like, there's an opportunity to get me into acting, which I really want to get back into. And people are like, well, what's happened since? I'm like, nothing. Like, they're editing the movie and I keep going back to him, waiting for the next auditions. And, if it comes up, who knows? I don't know where I'll be job wise but I just keep all those elements open. And then if that's the only thing I've ever done, fine.
Right.
Just like, people are like, well, what if it doesn't go anywhere? What if it does? But you act like that was wasted time.
Right.
I got to have fun for a day and was on a movie set, and if that's so I think that's why I have so many plates spinning, is because I understand the odds of anything happening. So the more things that I'm into,
you have a better chance
of that going
sticking.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't know if people ask you, but constantly people are like, well, what do what's your dream gig? I'm like, I don't really have one. My dream gig is to be able to just be myself, do what I do, and get paid for it.
One that pays well, and that I don't have to do a day job.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
right. That's really it.
Because once you land that, the opportunities from that is just going to be mind blowing.
It's the first one. It's that dam
breaking. That door opens, and there it is.
You walk in, you're
Shangri-La.
like, oh, hey, this is where all the people who make a living.
This is the green room that I've been looking for.
Exactly. Yeah, this one's actually green. As opposed to the bathroom I've been waiting in before shows for years. So, but when I look back, and I think about the other thing though, when you reflect in the past, is I think of things that I have done.
Okay.
That, a lot of people don't know. If I really sat down and it kind of told you my musical background and my musical resume, people would probably wonder, why are you not anywhere? I'm like, because that's the industry.
Right.
It's a survival industry.
It's brutal.
Guess what? No one cares what I did yesterday or the day before. Nobody.
Yep.
And you can tell those guys because that's all they'll talk about is stuff they used to do.
Exactly.
And I'm like, oh, that means you're doing nothing now. That's what that means.
Yeah.
And so I don't talk about it. I'm like, no, and that's the reality. Oh, you did all those stuff? Cool. Which means you're doing nothing now.
Jack what?
And so, you can have those conversations, and a lot of guys you get close to, then you kind of start talking like you're learning stuff they did in the past.
Right.
You're like, holy crap,
Yeah.
But they're not going to be forefront about it because they don't care. That's not the gig. The gig is survival. What's the next thing? Right. And so I'm starting to figure out kind of that element. So
I got you.
We'll take a short little break here, and I'm going to make some coffee probably. And then we'll be back in a few minutes. Please hang out with us and stay with us for the second
friends.
half. If you don't, make some friends and then tell them.
And then make more.
That's right. Back.
If you are trying to quit drinking or doing too many drugs, listen to me. You don't know me and we'll never meet. I had a problem like you once. I drank and used to party a little too much till it got out of control and almost ruined my life. I realized I needed help to fix my problem before it totally destroyed me. If you've tried to fix your drinking and drug problem and you know you can't do it alone, you need to call the National Treatment Advisors. They'll immerse you into a 30-day program to replace your old habits with new habits and totally change your life. And if you have PPO private health insurance, the entire program may be covered. Fix your problem right now before it gets any worse. Get clean. Call now and learn more. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581.
Out-of-date carpet giving you the blues? Tired of your old dingy and broken tile? Let my friends at the Floor Store in Cleveland, Texas give your home the makeover it deserves. This is Old Taco Joe coming to you for the Floor Store. Whether it's carpet, tile, wood flooring, or real wood laminate, the Floor Store can cover all of your flooring needs. Located at 405 West Henderson Street in Cleveland, Texas, owner Brent Harris can help. Shower tile, tub surrounds, even backsplashes. Give them a call today at 817-641-9444. The Floor Store, they got you covered.
When you're hungry for tender brisket or some delicious homemade cobbler, then look no further than Leach Brothers Barbecue, located at 1106 East Henderson, Cleveland, Texas. Leach Brothers has been family-owned and operated since 1950. Take it from me, Taco Joe Orwinski. Todd and his family have been filling my belly breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a long time. Heck, I even have my own booth, open Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Come see them for dine-in, carry-out, and all your catering needs.
Joco Community Radio. Listen live at tunein.com.
So they decided, let's give them a show. Got the mics and time slot ready to go. It was too late before they realized. Holy crap, we left him unsupervised.
This still needs to change, Ron. Tiffany, please get rid of that horrible music that some jackass did in 10 minutes. It was me.
Right.
Okay. So, I
You got the jackass part.
I am the jackass part. All the parts are my jackass. So anyway, before we took out the break, we're talking about the past today, in a good and bad way. It's just I had a reflection, and my 46th birthday was Saturday, and just kind of been in that reflection mode of a lot of things, and some of it very, very, like teenage years. Some of it literally just, I think about where I was right after the divorce, and before that, you're just like, wow. I mean, it's uncanny how much stuff has happened, and I think there's a story there. That's kind of why I've been writing the script, where I'm like, I think there's a lot of aspect to what I've gone through that really could be, very. And then I've got a couple of other things I'm just kind of making up to tie in some things together. But it's basically a story about. It starts off this guy, playing the gig, and like he's packing up, and like he had just finished. He's packing up, and some guy comes up. This is the very first scene. Guy comes up, like, "Oh man, are you done?"
Nope.
Yeah. I've been here for 3 hours, and he's like, "Oh, you play anything?" He's like, I'm sorry, I'm done." And the guy just, "Oh man, blah blah," and he says some stuff and walks off, and the guy's like, "You're welcome," and so that's kind of the first scene that starts, and you see him, he's walking out of the clinic, he's just like, that, here I go again, I can't believe, and that kind of a thing. So, but it kind of goes from that to the aspect of he actually someone ends up hearing one of his original songs at a gig and takes it to a big artist who makes a hit out of it. And so part of the story is him fighting that battle. I wrote that because, and so that's kind of the made up script part of it,
the writing credits.
And stuff like that. And so I have to, so the cool thing is I'm having to read a lot on the legality of that, because I have to figure out how's he going to win, or is he going to win it? I haven't really, but the whole point of the story, the movie, I think it would be, and people think you're actually going to pitch a script. I'm like, yeah, I know a guy who's in the business that I did a movie for, and I guarantee you he would read it.
Sure.
Independent or whatever like that. And I told him, and I would really like to audition for the lead. And if it's not, fine. But why not?
Yeah.
I mean, Sylvester Stallone walked around hundreds of people with a Rocky script that no one wanted to do.
Right.
And then when it finally happened, he wanted to play the lead, and people were like, well, no one knows who you are. Okay. So he'd go to the next person. I mean, so I just believe anything. And then that's possible. But if not, I can at least say, I got a cool script that I think tells the story of hundreds of thousands of us working musician that no one knows, and they have no idea what we do day to day.
Right.
And how much work it really takes, and and the emotional toll it takes on us. And everything like that. And so it's not going to be an extremely uplifting film. I think parts of it, I think by the end of it, it will be.
Oh, yeah.
But it's going to be, and I'm just not going to sugarcoat anything.
Well, it'll reflect, the natural progression of your life and your story. And
and there will be the suicide attempt in it. I got to have the element of depression and that kind of stuff. And so I just started writing and said, at the very, very least, it'll be something therapeutic for me to, and originally it's like, just something I want to put in book form, but I'm like, I really think in dialogue. I think in screenwriting, because I think in scenes and movies, and so I think I'm going to try it that way.
I think you should.
Why not? I've started it. I've got a handful of scenes at the beginning, and then there's of course there's a love interest in it, and there's kind of things like that. But it's a lot of it is really kind of based off. There's going to be events in it, and I have that. So I got kind of a rough idea of how I think it's going to happen with, the tune that he lost and things like that. So, because the stuff like that happens, and there always has to be, even in based on a true story, right? There's always those exaggerations, because it's got to be movie-esque, it's got to,
absolutely.
It's got to, and so, so I don't know. It's like, is it going to be? It might be based on true events, where like anyone who knows me, who reads it, will go, okay, a lot of this is James. Well, of course it is. You write what you know.
It's your, it's your life.
I wanted to tell my story in some way, and I'm like, what better way than to put in a cool story where even you never know, and so just pitch it. I think I have a lot to say, but so there's, and that was one thing I always wanted to do, and say if it takes me 3 years, fine. If I finish in 3 months, fine. I have no idea. It's just whenever it hits me to do that. And but I've already and the big part of it is, I tell people, it's just like going to the gym. It's just, you got to get started.
Yeah, and stick with it
and get started. And what's the hardest part about working out? Getting to the gym, because as soon as I'm there, it's like, oh, I love this. This makes me feel better. But before that, I'm like, oh, I don't want to go. Who wants to go?
This is stupid.
Yeah, this is stupid. I could be sitting here doing nothing, or I could be working on this, but I'm like, I know I have to go. And Tony Robbins is I listened to him tons, and I read tons of it. But there's one thing I really liked that he always says is, whenever you wake up, is you have to turn your shoulds into must. And it's like, I should get up, I should work out, I should eat this, I should, just change it to must. Just change that one word. I must get up, I must do that. And as silly as it is, but there's a lot of mornings I have to do that. And Carlo will remind me, what's your should? Is your should it be a must?
Right.
Some things could be should, I should probably cook tonight, but I don't have, must have to cook tonight. Right. Things like that. But there's certain things that, and I tell people that I literally have to change my rituals. And sometimes when I'm reflecting on the past, it reminds me why I'm changing my rituals.
I got you. Yeah.
And so I don't know, man. It's been rough. I mean, I don't talk about it a lot because I know everyone had a rough couple of years these last few years, but there's also the other side that doesn't diminish your story either. I tell people, talk about it.
Right.
And there's a big thing that I get from Brene Brown, who's one of my heroes. I just love her to death. She's one of the speakers, and her books was a huge part of my recovery, and I still listen to her a lot and read a lot. But my favorite thing she talks about is talking about, the quote about being in the arena, right? And it's a which president? Roosevelt. I'm going to sneeze. Teddy Roosevelt.
Right, I was about to ask which Roosevelt.
It's Teddy Roosevelt, where he talks about, being in the arena. And it's basically what he's saying is it's really easy to sit up in the stands and yell at the people in the arena of what to do.
Right.
But yeah, because they're not there, kind of a thing, whatever, So I'm surprised I haven't memorized it by now,
Just
but
like
I'll probably
the stars on TV.
Yeah, exactly. That's different. No. Dumbass. But it is. It's exactly
right.
That. And so, what she talks about is like, she puts it very simply, going like, hey, if you're not in the arena getting your ass kicked with me, I'm not interested in your feedback. And that's just huge. Like, that doesn't mean that I'm just telling you to piss off, whatever. But I tell people, hey, if you're not fighting every day to do an art or to be an entrepreneur and to know what I'm going through, I have zero interest in your feedback.
Right.
I have no interest in your feedback if you're not someone I would take advice from.
That's solid reasoning.
Yeah,
and
and people are like, oh, and I'm just so. But it took me a long time to not care, because everyone cares. I don't care. There's some point in your life where you cared what someone thought. People are like, oh, I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm going, it's easy to say that,
right?
But you really have to not. I mean, it's different. And I said, so do I care what certain people think? Absolutely. If there's a music professional in the room that could actually help make or break my career, I absolutely care what he thinks.
Of course.
You can be full of crap all you want. Say, well, I don't care. I'm just gonna do okay. Yeah, you still do what you do, but of course you care.
Of course,
right?
Absolutely.
I care what my kids think of me.
Sure.
I mean, come on. Who are you lying to? Now, the lady at Walmart who's mad at me for not wearing a mask, I don't give a shit what she thinks.
Yeah,
I don't even know who she is. Like, yeah, I don't care. So that's what I mean by when I don't care what people think. If you're not in the arena getting your ass kicked with me, I have zero interest in your feedback. And I tell people it's extremely powerful, because I've had a lot of people go, well, man, it's time to give up, music and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, cool. How's that job you constantly bitch about? I mean, it's like
right.
you hate your job. What? You're not selling it well, man. You're not selling your choices well because you hate your job. It's like
and you sold your gear, so there's that.
And you sold your gear to me,
right?
Ironically, but it's just like Zoltan, the comedian. I love that. It's just like, I'm gonna have kids, but I got to be honest, man. You guys out there with kids are not selling me on it. Like every time I see you out in the public arguing with them, and there's this, and the kids are, we say thank you. Did you say thank you? And he goes, what I want to do? I want to buy a jet ski, because every time I see people on jet skis, they're having a good time. They're selling me on that. And so, and a lot of people do that, with their jobs. They're like, oh, I was like, well, you hate your job.
Right.
You're not selling me on that.
Mm-hmm.
I said, dude, if you die, the obituaries the job is going to be posted before your obituary. That Most is likely. Fact. I said, no one gives a shit about it's, and I told Carla that. I was like, the money, the job, the car, and all that, it's for the position. It's not for you.
Right.
And so once you're going, and then she unfortunately found out the hard way.
Right.
That's a girl. I say, it is not for you. Companies say, oh, we believe in you. But no, we don't. You're just that person in it right now. I don't believe. any huge corporation like that. Small businesses, absolutely.
Right.
Under 500 employees, absolutely. I said, but anything above that, no, they don't care. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, they don't, because they can't care to function the way they need to function. Now, the biggest thing about going in the past is, boy, would I have bought stocks different. See, Amazon, Facebook, man,
Apple.
Could you imagine? I invested in some kind of fruit company. You know, it's like, damn it. But I mean, that's really about it. You know, those things I would do. But and I love the whole conversation of, well, I wouldn't do a thing different. You're full of shit.
Exactly, full of shit.
You're absolutely full of shit. So remember that time when I drank a liter of Cuervo Gold? I wouldn't have done that again.
We funneled Everclear.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that again. I woke up. This was in college. I woke up in someone else's clothes covered in carpet deodorizer because I threw up all over myself. I would not do that again. Like, who are you kidding?
That's just James. It's Thursday.
Yeah, but I did. I woke up and I was just like, why am I? There were drugs here last night where they're like, no, it's carpet deodorizer. You threw up yourself. No one wanted to clean it up. So
why do I look like I rolled around in Peru?
Just like, you guys suck. So I used to, one of the things that I really liked in college was tequila shots. After this night, I have never had an ounce of tequila since.
I can imagine.
But like the biggest night I had was like 8. Right. So we're at this party and people are like, well, didn't you have 8 shots one night? I was like, yeah. I was
back to back to back, or just
within about an hour.
Yeah, so that's basically back to back.
Yeah. And they were like, you think you could beat that? I'm like, probably.
And did you chase
I lost count at 24 in a 2 hour period.
Chase it with any?
No,
no.
That was
I didn't know if you had a shot in a beer.
Straight up alcohol poisoning. It was bad. I had to took about 4 days to get out of my system. And so see, but that's how we learned to do things back in my day. Like you would fall, like, you know, when we were riding bikes, we would fall and scrape our knees. And that was the incentive to learn how to ride a bike, because you didn't want to fall and scrape your knees and hurt yourself. So you learned balance.
Yeah.
But now it looks like they're about to be shot out of a rocket into space with all the shit they have to wear. And I'm like, how's he ever going to be
elbow pads, knee pads?
How's he going to be incentivized to learn?
When they swim, air helmets, and it's like they're just bobbing there, just like, God help me.
God. And I'm like, you know, safety, it's one thing, but that there's a comedian, he's one of my favorite comedians, Jeff Allen, but he talks about it. He goes, like, we learned to do stuff because we did stupid things. He goes, there's a...
Hey, you're not supposed to jump off a roof.
He goes, no.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah. We didn't have to be told some things, like don't eat detergent.
We
didn't have to be told that.
You see your friend jump off, he breaks his leg. Okay, check that off. We're not doing that next week.
Either that or the other. There's always the one kid going, I wouldn't break if I did it. Okay, well, you go too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and that's the kid who swallowed too many marbles and didn't have kids
lead paint, lived under power lines as a kid.
He did not grow up to have kids of his own
because he was sterile from the lead paint.
Natural selection. But Jeff Allen talks about that's the America I grew up in. He goes, someone told me once, if you take a jar and you put dry ice in it and then close the jar, that it will explode. So I went and got a jar
and put dry ice in it.
And I went to the ice cream man because, you know, that was a daily thing pretty much when we were growing up, right? And so the ice cream guy came in, he's like, hey, do you have any dry ice? He's like, well, what are you going to do with it? So, well, I'm going to put it in this jar. I'm going to watch it explode. Okay, here's your dry ice.
That'll be $2, please.
Right, yeah. So here's your dry ice. So, you know, later that night when my mom is pulling glass shards out of my face, my dad comes home and is like, what happened? Well, someone told me if you put dry ice in the jar, that explode. He's like, and you did it? It's so he just smacks the back of his head. He's like, what am I, raising a moron? But guess what? I have never done it again.
That whole thing of you know, if your friends jumped off a bridge, would you do it? It's, you know, your parents said that, and it's like, what?
Yeah,
same.
Of course I would. And I found out for a long time ago that the answer is not, well, if they survived.
No, I wouldn't.
And
I'd
also,
push them off. No,
if there are starving kids in China, the answer is not, we'll send it to them. That's not the answer either.
Yeah, there's definitely phrases that you learn when you get that whooping.
Why is everyone starving? I don't think everyone's starving in China, Mom. I feel pretty confident that you're making this up.
Starving kids in Ethiopia.
They're starving kids down the street.
Yeah,
you never talk about them.
Yeah,
you remember the kids are out in the front yard eating mud all the time.
They're making mud pies.
They're starving too. And then we'd have the argument. You know, my mom would always make this cheesy like potato casserole, right? And she'd be chopping up onions. And we're like, well, why are you putting onions in there? And she's like, well, it's just for flavor. I said, well, but we don't want the onions in there. She's like, you won't even know they're in there. Well, then why put them in there? Your argument makes any sense, because when you're a kid, if you see an onion, you've already tasted it, right? Now I want them in there,
right?
Because now onions, I'd like, but when you're a kid's like, well, you won't even taste it. Then why put it in there? I'm calling BS on this, Mom. And so anyway, so that's some of the good past stuff that's come up.
Of course.
My family, and you can tell by the picture, my brothers and I are all still very close.
Right.
My mom and stepdad were extremely close to, are actually moving back to Texas to be around us. They were in Arizona for years in this big, huge RV park that was kind of, then after COVID, it's just a lot of it kind of changed. Like there's a lot of things they had access to that they shut down. Like there was, there's like a 3-par 9-hole golf course there, and then there's like a billiards room, and they have their own restaurant.
Play golf. Good grief.
And I don't know if the golf part of it, but the point is that a lot of that, and they're like, well, but our rates didn't go down.
Right.
So
our amenities went down.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
The rest of it didn't.
So they finally decided, you know what, I think it's time. I'll come back to Texas. So the whole family
are they here now? Or are they in?
It will be in December. They have the apartment. They're supposed to be. They're going to come down with a moving truck in December.
Are they moving to Fort Worth area?
No, it's up in. It's actually closer. It's between where my other 2 brothers are. I have a brother in Carrollton and one in Saxe. And I think they're up in a Garland area. They found a nice area up there, something like that. Yes, and so we're kind of but an hour away is better than 14 hours.
Well,
so
yeah, of course.
But and if my kids weren't in the Burleson schools, and if it I probably would have gone up in that area too. But it's really not a big deal, because in Metroplex everything's an hour. Every gig's an hour. Like every gig I ever have, it's an hour and a half. Doesn't matter where it is.
Yeah.
Well, it's in Burleson. It's still probably an hour. It's just everything's an hour.
You never know.
Everything's an album away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. That's how I used to always use distance, because I know whenever we went to Brownsville, I said, well, it's about 9 albums. So it's about 9 albums long. That's our measurement of distance.
It's 2 Buc-ee's away.
Yeah, it's 2 Buc-ee's. It's like parsecs, Isn't that a measure of, never mind. No. But
measure here.
9 albums away. Unless it's Rush albums, it's like 6.
Or Widespread Panic, it's 1.
Or
Grateful
James
Dead.
Coltrane, it's 1 song, Bitches Brew.
Brew. I was just saying.
So it's like
it's just the first track.
It's a couple of Bitches Brew songs there,
Yeah. It's the first side.
So there's, so I've tried to. I always have this back and forth of thinking when I'm in the past of it's like all this hard stuff, but then it's always interrupted by some great memory that it's always going to be a combination.
I wonder if when we make references like that to Bitches Brew and
anyone
spread,
has a clue
if anybody actually goes back and what are they talking? They go back and try to look at the reference and they say, "Oh, okay, so what's 12 minutes? Okay, cool,
yeah,
or I wonder if anybody does that. I always do that when somebody's like, "Oh,
a music reference."
Now,
yeah, I do.
I always do.
We do.
I
Because
I guess maybe it's more of a musician thing.
That's the curiosity will get us, but yeah, your average cat's
Probably
not going to sit down and listen to Bitches Brew and get any of it, or even want to, and that's fine. Speaking of Bitches Brew, I've tried listening several times and can't get into it. Help me understand what I am missing, please. I don't really know.
Now we're not only we radio hosts, we're IT department now.
We are IT department. No. And the first time that, well, if we were in college, my buddies would say pot helps. That's what. But I really wasn't I wasn't a pothead. I never have been, and never. I just, I think it's when I really started listening to Bitches Brew is after that Theory 4 class, Theory 3 or Theory 4, where I really started understanding a lot of the tritone substitutions and where it's going and that kind of stuff. But before that, I totally get why a person wouldn't get it. I mean, it doesn't bother me at all. Like, I'm not snobby in that sense of,
sure,
at all. It's the same way. And a lot of people say, well, there's a lot of music I can go on. It's like, I don't think I'm better than anybody else. It's just my palate's changed. Great chefs don't go to Chili's usually because their palates are so different that they don't taste what.
Yeah, don't get me started.
Yeah, I know. That's why I use it as a reference, though, because as a kid, you don't have that palate, and you're like,
right,
and most people don't. if you don't believe me, America has voted Taco Bell as the best Mexican restaurant in America. So if that doesn't tell you how stupid Americans are,
well, that's because the majority of people don't border Mexico directly.
Right.
They don't, they don't
well,
have that
it is. It's always
direct influence.
It's always an influence. It's always an educational thing.
Del Taco.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But it's just so for me, it's the complexity of it when I started actually understanding what the complexity was. So I totally get it. It's kind of math music in a sense, like a lot of prog guys.
Yeah.
Like what's math music and certain things like that. And I agree with that, especially from a lot of the Coltrane stuff that he did. It was really even out there for him.
Oh yeah.
But
and I mean, even Charlie Parker, I mean, his stuff was way off of, what was going on in the scene at the time. I mean, it was just, it's just, that's the way it is. And to move it forward, like Bitches Brew, but look at Tool. I mean, it's, in a modern sense, I mean, when they came on the scene, it was just like, it was just so
everyone's going to break the mold of something,
right? Or move something along.
Absolutely. And that's, I think we've had this conversation. We're not huge Nirvana fans, but we have such a respect for what they brought into the scene from this in the sense of changing it. But there's so many other bands I would put way before them with that sound.
When we discussed them, I didn't appreciate them when they came out. When they were big and popular,
right?
We were both in high school.
It's a reflection of what they brought. Maybe
it was like I didn't really understand, but now since as I've grown up, it's like okay, I mean, I appreciate it, and I can I know what they're doing, but and
that's what I tell people is like people that are always anti-Beatle people. I said that's fine, I totally get it. I said, but you can't deny it, right? But you also know that there's about 100 bands you love that probably wouldn't have happened if the Beatles hadn't broken that mold.
Right.
So, and I'm the same way with like I'm the same way with Elvis. Honestly, like to me, he was the American Idol of the time, and people get so mad at me when I say it's like I'm not cutting him down at all. The man. Great actor, good-looking guy, wonderful voice. I totally get it, but he was the American Idol at the time. That was
absolutely,
he was an actor who then did,
or music
stuff like that. I said he was phenomenal.
Acting,
yeah, and in the same way, the Eagles brought a lot of multi-harmony and a lot of cool things to music. But I'm not a big.
I'm not an Eagles fan either.
Really, I mean, total respect. Except Don Henley, screw that guy. He's just a dick. Anyway, but I mean, some of the stuff, like I think they were masters of what they did. That doesn't mean I listen to it a whole lot, and I really care for it.
Like I said, the whole earlier, right place, right time.
Yeah,
they were
to me. Give me Allman Brothers. If I'm going to go in that route, I have other people that I'll listen to in that genre, but it's a respect thing. And I think I'm getting really tired. And I love people when they always tell me, well, what real like is. I'm like, oh, please tell me. I have no idea what that is.
Please teach me, since I spent,
and it seems
countless hours and thousands of dollars getting a piece of paper that says, hey, I know music. Please.
And that's the thing. Those people get opinion confused with, like, I tell people, like, when I think country, when I think the ultimate country artist, I think King George. I think George Strait. I do. I think in the sense of that Texas, but I don't ever listen to him. It just doesn't necessarily do anything for me. But the guy's phenomenal at what he did.
It's funny that you bring country up because I know we got a couple minutes, but so I was reading a story about Willie Nelson, and the story was about what people consider country music, and it's one of those things where each as it progresses or regresses depending on what
your
side
perception
of the fence you are,
right?
But it's the same thing. Like now, Willie Nelson's considered classic country. When he came out, and him and Waylon and
the outlaw stuff,
Merle
the real
did all that. They did the outlaw stuff. People were like, "That's rock and roll," or that's not real country. It's not.
There's always been an
Husky
argument for that.
and Tex Ritter and Hank. It's just one of those things. And so now that he's considered classic country, and of course King George is amazing, and then of course now you're stuck with Florida Georgia Line and all that.
Once again,
and a lot of people call it Nashville pop or rock, and
that's what it is. Is it a progression or a regression?
Right.
Well, I think pop music in general, there's always been bad pop music.
Absolutely.
People don't remember it from the 40s and 50s and 60s because it's not timeless or ageless. But I mean, it was there.
You dig the 50s rock and rockabilly
She
stuff
wore
up.
an
There was
itsy bitsy teeny
there's
weeny
so
yellow
many
polka.
bubblegum.
Are you kidding me? That's the Florida Georgia Line of its time.
right.
It wasn't any
Yeah.
better. Are you freaking
Right.
kidding me? It
Yeah.
was dumb then, but just because it's older, it was better. I'm like, no, 99 red
analog.
love balloons, terrible, right? But it was
Right.
huge in the 80s. So I don't
want a
necessarily.
hippopotamus for Christmas.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, just let it be what it is. You
Right.
know, like what you like, respect what you respect, and and I think people just need to get away from knowing things and opinion, and that's just my
Separating
opinion,
the two.
Ironically, well, that's what people's like. Well, my opinion is this guy's great, and I'm going, that's fine, but my opinions generally are related to execution of the art form, and so
Right.
People can sing off key the whole song, but they're like, but he sings with such emotion. I'm like, I don't care. It's off. It's just incorrect. So
When you're wrong, you're just wrong.
when you're wrong, you're wrong.
Right.
That opinion hasn't even shown up yet.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Well,
Great
next
show,
week we'll be
yeah.
here Monday. Yeah, this is a fun show. And next Monday, we're actually going to probably talk a lot of music next Monday because I got some ideas. And then we'll go from
Yikes.
there. So everyone have a great week, and we'll holler at you later. Peace out.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio.